There are places in this world that hold secrets, dark, twisted secrets that should never be unearthed. I thought I was just checking into a quiet, forgotten motel hidden deep in the misty woods, a place to escape to clear my mind. But the Shadowed Pines Motel is not just another roadside stop. It's a trap, a place bound by rules, strange, suffocating rules that you must follow or suffer the consequences. I didn't understand at first. I thought they were just bizarre guidelines, until I broke one and something began watching me. The Shadowed Pines Motel stood at the edge of the forest, shrouded in a thick, ghostly mist that seemed to breathe, curling around the trees like skeletal fingers. My car's headlights barely cut through the darkness, and the neon sign flickered erratically, its dim green light spelling out Shadowed Pines Motel, though a few letters blinked on and off, giving it a haunted, almost sentient appearance. I'd been driving for hours, desperate to escape the crushing weight of the city, the noise, the chaos, the memories I couldn't outrun. A storm was rolling in, lightning crackling in the distance, and the first cold drops of rain were beginning to spatter against the windshield. I didn't have a choice. I needed shelter, and Shadow Pines was the only place for miles. I parked in the gravel lot, my tires crunching over the damp stones. The main office was a small, weathered building, the wooden beams warped and darkened by time. A single yellow light glowed above the entrance, casting a sickly hue over the worn office sign. Pushing the door open, I was greeted by a dry, musty scent, like old paper and damp wood. A thin, pale man stood behind the counter, his eyes dark and sunken, with a faint, almost forced smile on his lips. His name tag read Frank. His voice was a low, raspy whisper. "Looking for a room?" he asked, his gaze never quite meeting mine. "Yeah, just for the night," I replied, trying to sound casual, though something about the place already made my skin crawl. Frank nodded, sliding a faded, yellowed paper across the counter. "Before you check in, you must read and understand the rules." I glanced down, expecting the usual hotel guidelines. No smoking, checkout time, that sort of thing. But as my eyes scanned the list, a cold knot twisted in my stomach. Rules of Shadowed Pines Motel. 1. Do not leave your room after midnight. 2. Keep the curtains closed at all times. Do not look outside. 3. If the phone rings between 1 o'clock and 3 a.m., do not answer. 4. Do not speak to anyone who knocks on your door after dark. 5. Always leave a tip for the housekeeper, even if you don't see them. 6. Never, under any circumstances, take anything from the motel. I chuckled nervously. Is this some kind of joke? Frank's smile tightened. Not a joke, just rules. You must follow them. I wanted to argue, to ask why, but something in his expression, a mixture of fear and resignation, silenced me. I signed a register, handed him some cash, and he slid an old brass key across the counter. "Room 7, down the hall, to the left," he instructed, and his voice seemed to waver. "Remember the rules." Stepping back outside, the mist seemed thicker, swirling around me, dampening my clothes as I hurried along the narrow, covered walkway. Room 7 was tucked at the far end, its wooden door warped and chipped. The key turned with a rusty, reluctant click, and the door swung open with a low groan. The room was simple: faded floral wallpaper, a creaking bed, a small desk, and a tiny bathroom. A faint scent of pine and something else, something metallic, hung in the air. I dropped my bag on the bed and tried to shake off the creeping unease. It was just an old motel, nothing more. Yet, I found myself checking the lock twice, then 3 times. The rain outside grew heavier, a steady drumming against the roof, while the wind howled, causing the walls to groan. I drew the curtains, their dusty fabric blocking out the mist-shrouded forest beyond. I tried to distract myself, flipping through the few static-filled channels on the ancient TV. But my mind kept drifting back to those rules. Why so specific? What would happen if I didn't follow them? Hours passed. The room's dim lamp cast long shadows across the walls. Eventually, exhaustion won, and I lay on the creaky bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain's rhythmic assault. I must have drifted off because a sudden, sharp noise jolted me awake. I sat up, heart pounding. Silence. Only the rain and the occasional rumble of thunder. I checked my phone. 12:17 a.m. Don't leave your room after midnight. The words echoed in my mind, and an irrational fear gripped me. I glanced at the window, curtains still drawn. I checked the door, still locked. I laughed at myself, feeling foolish. It was just a creepy motel with stupid rules. Then it happened. A soft, slow knock on the door. My blood turned to ice. I sat frozen, staring at the door. The knock came again, louder this time. 3 steady, deliberate knocks. Don't speak to anyone who knocks on your door after dark. My mind raced. It had to be a prank. Maybe Frank was messing with me. But then I remembered his fear, the way his voice had trembled. My breath came in shallow gasps. I didn't move. A third knock, then silence. Minutes passed, agonizingly slow. I didn't dare to breathe, my gaze locked on the door. Eventually, the tension seemed to ease. Maybe they were gone. Maybe it was just my imagination. I was about to let out a sigh of relief when the phone rang. I stared at it, heart hammering against my ribs. If the phone rings between 1 o'clock and 3 a.m., do not answer. It continued to ring, the shrill sound piercing the thick silence of the room. Over and over, my trembling hand reached for it instinctively, hovering above the receiver. But I pulled back. The ringing stopped abruptly. Silence returned, heavier than before. I checked the time, 1:32 a.m. Sleep was impossible now. I sat on the bed, wide-eyed, the darkness around me pressing closer. Hours seemed to drag by, the rain never letting up. Finally, a faint, gray light began to filter through the curtains. Dawn. I survived the night, or so I thought, because as I stepped into the bathroom, I saw it. Words scrawled in dark, wet letters on the mirror. You broke a rule. There will be consequences. I stumbled back from the bathroom mirror, my breath catching in my throat. The words, slick and dark, dripped slowly down the glass. You broke a rule. There will be consequences. Panic clawed at me. I wiped at the mirror, but the letters didn't smear. They remained, vivid and wet, almost as if freshly painted. Yet my fingers were clean. No, this couldn't be real. I must have been sleep-deprived, on edge from last night's paranoia. My mind had to be playing tricks on me. But deep down, a cold, gnawing dread whispered that I was wrong. I tried to collect myself, splashing icy water on my face. The room around me seemed smaller, the shadows in the corners darker, almost pulsing with an unseen presence. I needed to leave, get out of this cursed place. I grabbed my bag, yanked open the door, and nearly ran straight into Frank. He stood there, his pale face expressionless, but his eyes, those hollow, sunken eyes, seemed to bore into me. Checking out so soon, he asked, voice as calm as ever. Yes, I snapped, trying to sound confident. I have to go. His gaze shifted past me to the open bathroom door, and for a split second, his expression changed, a flicker of pity, perhaps fear. But then it was gone. I see. Well, you're free to leave, of course, he murmured, stepping aside. I hurried past him, feeling his gaze lingering on me. The mist outside had thickened, swirling like restless souls around the motel's skeletal frame. I made my way to the office, my pulse hammering in my ears. "Wait," Frank called out behind me. I stopped, reluctantly turning. "You follow the rules, yes?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. I tried, but someone knocked, and the phone rang. I didn't answer it, though. I insisted, desperation leaking into my voice. Frank's face fell. He stepped closer, his voice a whisper. "If you broke a rule, they know, and they do not forgive." "They? Who are they?" I demanded, but Frank only shook his head, the fear in his eyes growing. "I can't help you. Not now. Just leave. Leave before it's too late." He turned, practically fleeing back into the office, the door slamming shut behind him. I didn't need any more convincing. My car was parked right where I left it, though the mist seemed to press against it, the foggy tendrils sliding over the windows like grasping hands. I threw my bag into the passenger seat, jammed the key into the ignition, and twisted. The engine sputtered, coughed, died. "No, no, no," I whispered, trying again. The same sputtering, lifeless sound. Panic flared hot and fierce. I tried a third time, nothing. I pounded the steering wheel in frustration, my heart racing. I stepped out, the mist cold and damp against my skin. I popped the hood, but I knew nothing about engines, and the twisting metallic innards were a tangled, useless puzzle to me. I glanced back at the office. Maybe Frank could help, but the office door was now locked. The lights inside flickered off. He was gone. I swore under my breath. Maybe I could walk. Maybe the mist would clear as I got farther from this cursed place. With nothing else left to try, I slung my bag over my shoulder and began walking down the narrow, forested road. The mist thickened, a suffocating blanket. The trees loomed, their gnarled branches reaching overhead, twisting together like skeletal fingers. I couldn't even see the sky, but I didn't stop. My footsteps echoed on the damp, gravel road. The mist swallowed the sound, an eerie silence settling in. And then, after what felt like hours, I saw it. A dark figure standing in the mist ahead of me. I froze. The figure didn't move. It was tall, thin, almost a silhouette with no discernible features. Just a black shape that seemed to shiver in the fog. My mind screamed at me to turn back, but I couldn't. I stood there, heart thundering in my chest. Then it moved. Slowly, it raised an arm, pointing directly at me. A sudden, bone-chilling cold swept over me. I turned and ran, the mist clawing at me, the shadows seeming to reach out, trying to trip me, to pull me down. My footsteps pounded against the gravel, my lungs burning, but the mist seemed endless. The trees twisted, their branches curling into grotesque shapes. Finally, the motel appeared through the swirling fog. I didn't even think. I ran straight for my room, fumbling with the key, slamming the door behind me, and collapsing against it, gasping for breath. Silence. But it was the wrong kind of silence. The air was thick, oppressive, and then I heard it, the slow, deliberate creak of a chair. I turned, and my blood ran cold. Someone was sitting at the small desk in the corner of my room. A dark, shadowy figure, its face obscured, but its eyes were glowing. A sickly, pale yellow light, piercing through the darkness. "I told you not to break the rules," a whisper rasped, the voice twisted and distorted, as if coming from somewhere far away. My knees buckled, and I slid to the floor, paralyzed by fear. I tried to speak, to beg, but my voice caught in my throat. The figure rose, impossibly tall, its shadow stretching across the walls, its form distorting, writhing like a mass of twisting tendrils. Leave, please. I managed to croak, tears burning in my eyes. The figure tilted its head, the glowing eyes narrowing. Leave? You cannot leave. Not anymore. It lunged, darkness flooding over me, a cold, suffocating weight pressing down. I screamed, clawing at the air, but the darkness swallowed me, pulling me into a void. The world faded, twisting, warping, until all that remained was the darkness and the distant echo of that cold, mocking whisper. I awoke on the floor of my room, the pale light of dawn bleeding through the dusty curtains. I gasped, choking for air, my body soaked in cold sweat. My heart hammered in my chest. It was a nightmare, a vivid, suffocating nightmare. But then I saw the door. Long, dark claw marks gouged into the wood from the inside. And on the wall, just above the bed, words were carved, deep, jagged letters that seemed to pulse with a faint, sickly glow. You cannot escape the consequences. I stumbled back, my head spinning. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered, my voice trembling. A familiar, ragged whisper drifted through the line. You broke the rules. You can never leave. And the line went dead. My fingers trembled as I stared at the phone. The call already ended. A suffocating sense of dread wrapped around me. Each breath a struggle. The claw marks on the door, the words etched into the wall. None of it was a nightmare. It was real, and I was trapped. I paced the room, trying to calm the frantic drumbeat in my heart. My mind raced with 1,000 panicked thoughts. I needed to escape, but how? My car was dead, and the road only seemed to twist endlessly through the mist. Walking had led me right back to this cursed place. Was there any way out? A sharp knock on the door shattered the silence. I froze, my eyes darting to the door. It was morning. Surely, this was just housekeeping. I steadied myself and called out, trying to keep my voice steady. Who is it? A soft, hesitant voice replied. It's Marie, the housekeeper. My throat tightened. I remembered the rule. Always leave a tip for the housekeeper, even if you don't see them. I hadn't left a tip, but could I trust this person? I'll leave the tip on the nightstand. I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. A pause. Then, in a softer, almost pleading tone, please let me in. I can help you. Every instinct told me to keep the door locked, but desperation clawed at me. If she could help, if there was even a chance. I unlocked the door and pulled it open. A woman stood there, thin and pale, with dull, lifeless eyes and matted, graying hair. She wore a faded maid's uniform, her hands clasped nervously. Please, she whispered, stepping inside quickly and shutting the door behind her. Her eyes darted around, as if expecting something to burst from the shadows. You shouldn't have broken the rules. I know that. I snapped, fear and frustration spilling over. But I didn't know what they meant. I didn't. She raised a shaking hand, silencing me. Quiet. It's listening. Who's listening? I whispered, dread settling like ice in my veins. Her gaze drifted to the mirror, cracked and stained, its surface reflecting the room in warped, twisted fragments. They are. The watchers. They see everything. They hear everything. And once you break their rules, they claim you. What are they? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Ghosts? Demons? Worse, she whispered, backing away from the mirror. They are ancient. Shadows that cling to this place. Feeding on fear, on despair, on those who stray from their rules. I swallowed hard, but I didn't even know the rules were serious until... Once you step onto this ground, you're bound by them. The rules aren't just guidelines. They're a contract. Her eyes welled with tears. I've tried to leave, tried so many times, but I always wake up here, trapped. You mean you're a prisoner too? I asked, a chill sweeping over me. She nodded, wiping at her eyes with a trembling hand. I've worked here for years, or maybe it's been centuries. Time doesn't work right here, and every time someone new comes, they become part of it. Unless what? I pressed, hope flickering to life. Unless you make a trade, she whispered, leaning closer. Someone must take your place. Another soul. Only then can you escape. The flicker of hope was doused in an instant. I can't do that to someone else. Marie's expression twisted with pity. Then you'll die here. Or worse, you'll become one of them. A sudden scraping sound echoed outside the window, like claws dragging against glass. Marie's head snapped toward the sound, her face going pale. They know I'm here. They know I'm helping you. I don't want to hurt anyone. I stammered, panic surging again. Please, there has to be another way. She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Then you need to hide. If they find me here, they'll punish you even more. What about you? I whispered. I'm already cursed, she whispered back, her eyes shimmering with resigned sorrow. But you might still have a chance. Before I could protest, she yanked the door open and slipped out, shutting it behind her. I stood there, heart racing, staring at the door. Silence followed. I pressed my ear to the door, hearing muffled voices, angry, distorted, as if underwater. And then, a scream, a wet, choking scream that was suddenly cut short. I backed away, heart pounding. I didn't dare open the door, didn't want to see what had happened. But then a whisper echoed through the room, cold and sharp. Help! I spun around. The mirror. Marie's face was pressed against the glass, her pale, terrified expression distorted, her mouth moving in silent pleas. Her hands clawed at the other side of the glass, her eyes wide with horror. Marie, I shouted, but the mirror warped, her image twisting, melting, until it was just a mass of darkness, swirling violently before going still. I stumbled back, my legs giving way, collapsing against the bed. Tears blurred my vision. This couldn't be happening. I had to wake up. I had to escape. But my phone buzzed again, another unknown number. I didn't answer. I wouldn't. But a text appeared. Running won't save you. Not anymore. My breath caught. I rushed to the window, tearing the curtains open, and my blood froze. The mist was gone, but the trees, they were twisted, gnarled things, their bark blackened, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal hands. The road was gone, replaced by a dark, endless forest that seemed to breathe, the shadows shifting, writhing. My phone buzzed again. They're coming. A frantic knock on the door, louder, desperate. I backed away, shaking my head. Go away, please. The knocking grew louder, a frenzied pounding. I cover my ears, tears streaming down my face. The lights flickered, and that icy, suffocating cold washed over the room. The walls seemed to ripple, the floor groaning beneath me. And then, silence. I opened my eyes. The door was still shut, the room eerily still. I took a shaky breath, trying to regain control, but the silence was wrong. Too thick, too heavy. And then, just barely, I heard it. A low, rasping whisper coming from the closet. A cold sweat slicked my skin. No, I hadn't opened the closet. I hadn't even looked at it. The door creaked, just slightly, a sliver of darkness spilling out. And from within, two pale, yellow eyes blinked, watching me. A twisted, hollow voice drifted out. You can't hide. Not from us. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the bed. My mind raced. I had to do something. Escape, fight, anything. But as I reached for the lamp, the darkness surged forward, the closet door bursting open, shadows pouring out like a living, writhing mist, clawed hands reaching for me, those glowing eyes piercing into my soul. And then I screamed. My scream seemed to echo, swallowed by the darkness as it surged from the closet, a living, writhing mass of shadows that twisted and coiled around the room. The air grew frigid, the walls groaning as if under immense pressure. The pale, yellow eyes blinked from within the darkness, locking onto me, cold, hungry, unblinking. I stumbled backward, my hands clawing desperately for something, anything, to defend myself. The lamp. I grabbed it and swung wildly, the brittle ceramic shattering uselessly against the encroaching shadow. The darkness recoiled, only for a moment, before surging forward again. "Stay away," I screamed, retreating to the corner, my back pressed against the icy wall. My vision blurred, my breaths coming in short, frantic gasps. The shadows reached for me, clawed, skeletal hands stretching, twisting, desperate to pull me in. But then, a sharp, blinding light exploded in the room. The shadows recoiled, hissing, their forms distorting, twisting away from the light. For a moment, they seemed to melt, retreating to the corners, where they writhed, pulsating like a nest of serpents. I shielded my eyes, blinking against the brilliance. The source of the light was the mirror, the cracked, grimy mirror on the wall. But it was different now, glowing with a radiant, silvery light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. And within the glow, I saw her, Marie, her face pale, her expression twisted with agony. "You must leave now," she screamed, her voice echoing from within the light. "They're weakened, but they will return. You must go." I tried. "I can't escape," I shouted back, my voice breaking. "The road, it just leads me back here. The car won't start." "There's another way," she cried, her form flickering within the mirror, her image distorting like ripples on water. "The woods, there's a path, but it is dangerous. They will try to stop you." My pulse raced. "What path? Where?" Her eyes shifted, her face contorting as the shadows began clawing at the edges of the light, hissing and writhing. "The path behind the motel. But hurry. Once the light fades, they will be free again." The light began to flicker, and a cold wind swept through the room, carrying with it the faint stench of decay. The shadows surged, clawing at the light, their skeletal hands stretching toward Marie's ghostly form. "Go," she screamed, her voice a piercing wail. "Run." I didn't need to be told twice. I yanked the door open, bolting into the misty hallway. The air was thick, almost suffocating, the scent of damp earth and decay overwhelming. The light in the hallway flickered erratically, casting jagged shadows that seemed to stretch and pulse. The main office door was ajar, the faint neon glow of the motel sign barely piercing the mist outside. I sprinted past it, my shoes skidding on the wet, moss-covered concrete. The mist seemed to cling to me, cold and damp, whispering faint, distorted voices, accusations, screams, pleading cries, all twisting together in a maddening cacophony. I reached the back of the motel, a narrow, overgrown path barely visible through the mist. Gnarled trees loomed overhead, their branches twisted, clawing at the sky. The shadows seemed to shift within the mist, pale yellow eyes blinking in and out of existence. I plunged into the forest, the wet leaves and slick mud slipping beneath my feet. The mist thinned here, but the darkness was thicker, an oppressive, suffocating weight that seemed to press against me. My breathing came in ragged gasps, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the eerie whispers that clung to the air. As I pushed through the twisted underbrush, I saw it, an ancient, moss-covered stone archway, half buried in the earth. A faint, silvery light shimmered just beyond it, the same glow I had seen in the mirror. Marie's light. I didn't hesitate. I sprinted toward it, my lungs burning, branches clawing at my arms and face. But just as I reached the archway, a hand shot out of the mist, grasping my wrist with an icy, crushing grip. I screamed, twisting, trying to pull free. A figure stood in the mist, Frank. But his face was wrong. His eyes hollow, black pits. His skin pale and stretched like withered parchment. His mouth twisted into an unnatural smile. "You cannot leave," he rasped, his voice a hollow echo. "You belong to them now." I thrashed, kicking at him, but his grip was iron. The mist thickened, and dark, shadowy figures began to emerge. Faceless, twisted shapes, their whispering voices blending together in a chorus of torment. But then, from beyond the archway, a soft, warm light flared, blinding, radiant. The shadows shrieked, recoiling, their twisted forms melting into the mist. Frank's face contorted, his grip loosening as he was pulled backward, his body dissolving into darkness. I staggered forward, the light washing over me, blinding me completely. The suffocating cold faded, the whispers silenced. I fell to my knees, gasping for air, the world spinning around me. When the light finally dimmed, I found myself on a narrow dirt path, surrounded by a dense, dark forest. But the mist was gone. The air was cold but fresh, the trees silent. No shadows lurking, no whispers clawing at my mind. I looked back. The archway was gone. The Shadow Pines Motel on. "Marie," I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. Silence. Only the soft rustling of the leaves. I was free, or at least I thought I was. But then my phone buzzed. I stared at the screen, dread knotting in my stomach. An unknown number. Hesitant, I answered. A faint, whispering voice drifted through the line. "They will never let you go." The call cut off. I stuffed the phone into my pocket, stumbling down the path. The forest seemed to close in around me, the air growing colder, the sky darkening. I walked faster, then broke into a run, desperate to escape the twisting, shadowed trees. But no matter how far I ran, the path stretched on and on, the trees growing darker, their branches clawing at the sky. And beneath the wind's hollow moan, I heard them, those faint, twisted whispers. Watching, waiting. The sun never rose. The darkness never faded. I wasn't free. I had escaped the motel, but the curse hadn't let me go. The darkness was endless. My legs ached, my lungs burned, but the path stretched on, winding through the twisted forest. Each step felt heavier, the shadows seeming to ripple and pulse, watching me. I had no sense of time, no day, no night, just the oppressive, suffocating gloom. The whispers grew louder, shifting from faint murmurs to frantic, desperate voices clawing at my mind. "You can't escape, you belong to them. It's too late, you broke the rules. Another must take your place." I cover my ears, stumbling forward. But the voices were inside me, cold, twisted echoes that gnawed at my sanity. I screamed, slamming against a tree, clutching my head. Tears burned in my eyes. Was this it? Would I wander forever, tormented by these shadows, never free? "No, please," I whispered, sinking to my knees, the damp earth cold beneath me. But then, through the darkness, a faint, silvery glow flickered. I looked up, desperate. The glow danced like a distant flame, swaying in the gloom. Hope stirred within me, fragile but fierce. I pushed myself up, stumbling toward the light. The path twisted, the trees pressing closer, their gnarled branches like skeletal hands. But I pushed on, the whispers swirling around me, their tones growing frantic, angry. And then I saw her, Marie. Her ghostly form shimmered in the darkness, her face pale, her expression one of sorrow. "You shouldn't have followed the light," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know what else to do." I cried, my voice cracking. I try to leave. I try to escape. But they won't let me go. "Because you belong to them now," Marie said, stepping closer. Her ghostly hand reached out, brushing my cheek, a touch cold and fleeting. "Unless you make a choice." "What choice?" I whispered, dread curling in my stomach. Her gaze drifted beyond me, to the darkness. Shapes twisted there, faceless, writhing shadows, their pale yellow eyes blinking in and out of existence. The air grew colder, and the forest seemed to close in, the trees bending, leaning toward me. "There is always a bargain," Marie whispered, her voice barely audible. "You cannot escape alone, but another can take your place." Another. The weight of her words crushed me. I can't do that. I can't trap someone else here. Then you will wander. Forever. A soul caught between worlds. Her voice grew softer, the silvery light around her dimming. "This place feeds on fear, on despair, and it will never let you go. Unless you feed it something else." I can't. I choked, tears burning in my eyes. Marie's gaze softened, pity clouding her ghostly eyes. "You're not the first to say that. But in the end, fear always wins." The light around her pulsed, and I saw them. Other figures, their faces twisted in agony, clawing at the darkness. Men and women, their forms flickering, some sobbing, some screaming in silence. Prisoners, just like me. "No," I screamed, stumbling back. "There has to be another way." But Marie's ghostly form flickered, her expression becoming hollow, her voice an empty whisper. "The only way out is a trade." The darkness surged, shadows stretching toward me, skeletal hands clawing at the earth. I turned, running down the twisted path, my breath coming in frantic gasps. The whispers grew louder, the darkness thickening, those pale eyes watching, hungry. I didn't know how long I ran. Time was a blur, an endless nightmare of twisted trees and clawing shadows. My mind felt frayed, terror clawing at my sanity. Was this the end? Was this all there was now? An endless, suffocating darkness? And then, I saw it. A faint, orange glow. A warm, flickering light just ahead. A cabin, old and crumbling, barely visible through the twisted trees. I stumbled toward it, desperate. The door hung ajar, swinging in the cold wind. I burst inside, slamming the door behind me. The air was thick with the scent of old, damp wood, the only light coming from a flickering oil lamp on a cracked table. The room was empty, the shadows dancing against the walls. But I was safe, at least for the moment. Or so I thought. From the darkness of the corner, a figure stepped forward, Frank. But he was different now. His face was twisted, his skin pale and stretched, his eyes empty voids. "Running won't save you," he rasped, his voice a hollow, echoing whisper. "Leave me alone." I screamed, backing away. "You broke the rules. You have one chance. Trade your soul for another," he continued, his twisted smile widening. or become one of them. No, no, please, I sobbed, clutching the table for support. Frank stepped closer, the shadows writhing around him. Decide. I shook my head, terror and despair crushing me. But then I saw the phone on the table, the old, rusted landline. A thought struck me, an idea, horrible and desperate. Fine, I whispered, forcing myself to stand. I'll make the trade. Frank's smile widened, his form flickering, the shadows pulsing with excitement. Good. My hand shook as I picked up the phone, the cold receiver heavy in my grip. I didn't know if this would work, didn't even know who I would call. But the moment I touched it, the dial spun on its own, and the line crackled. After a long, agonizing moment, a voice answered. Hello. A woman's voice, soft, tired, oblivious. My heart clenched, guilt stabbing at me. But the shadows closed in, whispering, their twisted faces pressing against the walls. I'm sorry, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. But I have to do this. Hello. Who is this? The woman asked, a faint note of confusion. The shadows twisted, surging toward the phone, their whispers growing frenzied. Please don't, I cried. But it was too late. The darkness surged, and the line went dead. The cabin shook, the shadows screaming, their twisted, clawing forms writhing, pressing against me. But then, silence. The darkness melted away, the shadows fading. The cabin was empty. Frank was gone. The twisted trees outside seemed still, almost peaceful, and the mist was gone, replaced by a clear, cold dawn. I stumbled out of the cabin, the crisp air filling my lungs. A dirt road stretched before me, winding toward the distant mountains. I was free, but as I walked, my phone buzzed. I didn't want to look. I was terrified, but my trembling hand reached for it. A text message from an unknown number. Thank you for your stay at the Shadowed Pines Motel. We hope you enjoyed your stay. Another has taken your place. A wave of nausea washed over me. Another had taken my place. Someone else, some innocent soul, was now lost in that nightmare. But I was alive. I was free. And as the sun rose, I told myself I wouldn't look back. I told myself I would forget. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had escaped the Shadowed Pines Motel, but I had left my soul behind.